Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sedona Psychics. And I'm still continuing our segment of Meet the Reader. And today I have the one and only Relic. Relic, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Obviously, it's a familiar face. So, Relic, before we dive in today, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good today, actually.
All
It's a good
right.
day.
All right. And what's the energy like for you coming into this little conversation slash interview?
I'm excited. I think this was kind of part of the original idea is to, shine a spotlight on
Mm-hmm.
everybody and highlight some of the ways that the different readers are unique. And so I think it's a cool thing. I'm excited.
Yeah, awesome. So pretty much I'm going to be asking kind of the same questions I'm asking everybody. The first half is going to be like your journey, how you got here, things like that. And then we're going to kind of go into your modalities, why they're special to you. And then we're going to get into some like advice and fun questions after that.
Cool.
Okay. So starting off strong, can you share a little bit about your spiritual journey and how this path first began for you?
So, man, I think I fall into the category of people that tried to kind of resist the spiritual awakening and the call to serve. So I was fortunate in a sense that I was exposed to a lot of spirituality early in my life. My mom does Reiki and angel readings, and she's pretty much retired now. But I think I kind of had a similar upbringing to you in a way that, like, you were just exposed to all that stuff very
Right.
young. And despite that, I still tried to kind of ignore it. And it was always like it was something that I did more as a personal practice than as a profession. But I think for me, that worked really well because it allowed me to just become very intimately familiar with the tools that I use, which runes is the main tool that I always use in readings. And that has always been the main one that I fall back on for my own personal insight and clarity when I'm at the fork in the road of life, so to say. So
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so I mean, I discovered runes pretty early. Truth be told, I was much more interested in them as a written language because I was also kind of familiar with them from Tolkien. It's like if you
Yeah.
read the Lord of the Rings books, he uses runes as the dwarvish written language. So I was kind of like interested in it from a nerding out on it perspective. But as I kind of went deeper into them and became more interested in like where they came from and all the old Norse sagas and mythology, I became more interested in using them like as a spiritual tool and as a divination tool. So I would say that's kind of how I found my way to runes. And I think Sedona also was a big part of my spiritual journey. I've lived in Arizona most of my life, not in Sedona, but I've lived in Arizona most of my life. So I always had Sedona in my backyard. It was a couple hours away. And so I think this was for me kind of one of those places that I would come for quiet contemplation to get away from it all and to kind of look within. So Sedona's always been special to me in my personal journey. So I think it's really cool that we get to be a part of other people's Sedona experiences. I am grateful for that opportunity to kind of be part of other people's stories. So yes, I would say Sedona is a huge part of kind of how I found my way to all this. And then when I moved here, I mean, finding you guys, finding the center, that
Hmm.
was definitely a huge moment in
That
the
was like a
path.
that was like a pivot moment
Yeah,
right
because
there.
that was really the point. Like when I got to Sedona, I just pretty much said, okay, I surrender. Put me where you need me, spirit.
Hmm.
And in a very short time later, I found this place, and not at all out of like logic or in intention from an analytical mind way. I was driving down the street. I felt compelled to come in, so I just
Hmm.
followed my own intuition. Did a U-turn in the street and came in. Molly was up at the counter that day, and so I started talking to her. And a couple days later, I was working here. So, yeah, so that was a really it was interesting how quickly everything fell into place. Like once I just kind of surrendered to
Surrendered. Yep. Hmm.
allowing spirit to work the details out for me, and I stopped trying to grip the wheel so tightly, everything just kind of fell into place. So
Yeah. That's what happened, guys, when you surrender and you quit
yes.
trying to control everything. Who or what were some of your biggest teachers or influences on your path?
Ooh. Um, I've had a lot of teachers, and I think for me, they kind of came in phases. Early on, would say a lot of my early teachers weren't necessarily spiritual, but just kind of motivational teachers. I
Mhm.
was interested in people like Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins because I was in the sales world, and I thought that was a path to self-improvement was basically I think how I saw that. I would say on like the spiritual teacher note, Dan Millman definitely um, is probably the author that had the biggest impact on me. He's the author of Peaceful Warrior. If you're not familiar, it's a great book. It's also been made into a movie now, and he's got a whole bunch of other books too, but that's the one that he's most known for. And there's been a bunch of others, and I think even being here, I mean, Winter and you, and
Mhm.
I've learned a lot from um, the other readers and the other, the other spiritual practitioners that work here. I think we all are fortunate that we get to we have kind of our own little spiritual community
Yeah, within the
in the
center,
center here.
yeah.
Yeah, so we get to learn a lot from each other and bounce things off of each other. And I think that honestly, like the community of people, I think lately has become more important than any one single individual
Yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
Um, but definitely just being here in this space, and I think it's embracing the call to service also. It's like as soon as you accept that, okay, part of what I'm doing is bigger than just me, I think it kind of compels you to step in your own power and step up your game to the next level because we're all in this together, and we're all remembering and reminding each other and remembering together. So yeah, I think just being here in Sedona, being here at the center, I think that is definitely been a big part of it.
Nice, nice. What challenges did you face early on, and how did you move through them?
I think one of the biggest challenges like early on in the awakening process, and especially in like exploring and trying to learn about spiritual practices and divination practices, I think early on for me it was just hard to find anybody else who was on the same wavelength. Like it's just
Right, yeah.
most of the time when you bring that stuff up to people, they just don't, they don't get it. They're just, that's not where they're at on their journey. And so I think that was one of the difficult things for me early on is just like finding other people that I could interact with.
That were
Um,
like-minded to kind of
yeah,
open that way.
like-minded
Yeah.
souls.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I would even say sometimes it's the people close to you, right? Sometimes it's your spouse or your parents or your
Mhm.
closest friends that don't get why you are all of a sudden acting this different way. So I think that is, while it's one of the most difficult parts of the process, it's also like in a way it's kind of what compels you to go deeper. But yeah, I would say just finding other like-minded people and knowing where. I also think lately it's I've been noticing that like it's hard sometimes to know where to go to get the information. There's so many sources of information now. You have to really pay attention to like where you're getting your information from so that it's not colored by somebody else's biases.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think I've been really drawn to trying to like go back to the source of things, looking at the origins and the roots of systems and
Mhm.
things, which sometimes it's easier said than done untangling that.
Oh, very true. What has surprised you the most about doing this type of work professionally?
Hmm. Maybe the scope of people that come in looking for the services that we offer. Because again, I think if you go back 20, 30 years, everybody that was looking for energy healing or psychic readings, they all fit a kind of similar profile. You could kind of pick them out right off the street corner. But nowadays, it's really not like that. You have no idea who's going to be open to spiritual practices and psychic readings. And I've seen people come in here that are doctors and lawyers. I've seen people come in that are in this world professionally already, and they're also, an energy worker or spiritual guide of some sort. So it's all walks of life. That's probably, I think,
Getting to work with all different
yeah,
types of
it's and that,
people
and
and
I think that's cool. I think that speaks to the collective awakening, right? That it really didn't used to be like that. It was a fairly short time ago. This was something that most people were just not open to. So I think
Mhm.
that's great that we're starting to see all walks of life open up to, open up to this stuff a little bit. So,
Yeah, it's just the beginning.
yeah.
I feel like over the next, like, I don't know, like 5 to 10 years, there's gonna be a lot more people opening up more spiritually and wanting to find that clarity and kind of healing themselves along the process as well.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said the healing because I think that's what a lot of it boils down to. I
Right.
remember when I first started working here, I was trying to categorize in my head the people that worked here as either readers or healers. And I pretty quickly realized you can't really draw that line very neatly
Yeah.
because really like the healings and the spiritual messages come through a lot of times like that is the healing, that the
Right.
message is
Mhm.
what heals the person. And so yeah, it's interesting how in a way it's all healing, it's all just kind of coming back to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So but I agree that I think that we are just kind of at this like tipping point where we're just barely starting to see this onslaught of awakening
Mhm.
souls trying to kind of make sense of everything. And so I agree. I think that in the coming years, we're going to see more and more people searching for answers in these types of methods. And I think that's a great thing. I think that again, I think that this speaks to the collective shift that's happening, and
Mhm.
it's all a good thing. It's all us moving closer back to a more balanced place. So.
Right. Yeah. I totally get that. 100%. So I know you kind of touched base on this a little bit in the beginning. So right now in your spiritual practice career journey, what modalities do you specialize in right now?
Well, my primary method for divination is always ring casting. And that is my favorite tool. I also use tarot cards and oracle cards, not just because a lot of people ask for them, which that's part of it. I want to be of service, and a lot of people that's what they want. But I think tarot and oracle can be a great way to bring visual imagery into the reading. And I think sometimes that like visual symbolism and imagery is what speaks to us. So well, I love runes and they will always be my favorite. I also really like hearts. I have a lot of tarot and oracle cards that I use quite often. And then I'm kind of branching out into some other stuff. I have recently gotten to the point where I'm comfortable doing palm readings for other people. I was studying it as a private thing for a long time. So I'm incorporating a little bit of palmistry. I've also started incorporating a little bit of, if people want it, numerology based off birth dates. Because I think sometimes looking at your birth date numerology, your palm reading, things like that tend to sometimes be more applicable through your entire lifetime. Whereas messages that come through rune casting tarot, that might be more like topical, what you are going through right now at this point. And so I like both, depending on the situation. It kind of depends on what the person asks for. And then I've also started to really enjoy doing like guided experiences for people. So I do a lot of my own personal work through like deep meditative states, shamanic journey work, and Akashic library exploration and things like that. And so that is something because I've found a lot of personal empowerment in those practices. I've started kind of offering that to other people, and I really enjoyed doing that almost as a like an attunement or empowerment. So you're going to get some messages and information out of the session, but it also hope it gets you closer to being able to work with those tools on your own and your own personal practice, whatever that looks like. So I think that that's something that has mostly just come up organically through people asking. And so I've had a lot of really cool experiences from that. And so again, I kind of tend to tailor it to the person sitting across the table from me. And it depends on what question they ask and what energy I feel them come in the room with.
Mhm.
But I would say that again, I mean, rune casting is always my first and foremost thing that I fall back on. And for that matter, it's worth mentioning that runes can also be used for more than divination. So I'm also a big fan of working with runes as a tool for manifesting positive energy and change into your life. And that's something that I'd also really enjoy helping clients with. So if people want to work more towards consciously creating and pulling energy into their life rather than trying to see what's coming around the bend, I'm all for that too. I think it, depends on a person, but sometimes that's almost more appropriate, I think, to approach it that way.
Okay. All right. How would you describe your reading style in your own words?
Grounded but mystical, I guess, is how I would try to sum it up. I try to keep things grounded in a sense that, like, I try to find a way to make them apply to your everyday life. Mystical, because a lot of what I do is grounded in very ancient esoteric practices. And so it's trying to kind of merge those two worlds, trying to figure out a way to bring the spiritual messages in a way that they can be integrated into our lives practically.
Is there a type of client or question you feel called to help with?
I would say the thing that really lights me up the most is when somebody comes in really ready to tap more into their own gifts and their own power. I'm really a firm believer that at the end of the day, like, we are our own, we're the source of our own greatest strength, right? So when people come in and they want to really own that and tap more into that, I would say that probably lights me up more than anything else. And just in general, I would say people that want to embrace their awakening process and embrace their true calling. That being said, I've had a lot of really cool readings that are just about more everyday stuff. Should I leave this job and go to this other career? Do I stick it out with this person, or do I, cut cut my losses and,
Move
sail into
on.
more uncharted waters, right? So I've had a lot of really cool readings for clients that have been more that end of things. So I don't mind that stuff at all either, but I would say, yeah, getting into the more like deeper topics, that I would say that probably lights me up more than anything.
So now we're going to kind of go into like what clients can expect when they're in a session with you. And then we're going to kind of move on to like wisdom and advice for our listeners and some fun and personal questions towards
Cool.
the end as well.
All right.
So, how do you help clients feel comfortable and grounded during a session?
That is a great question, and I think that is important. It's important to set the stage anytime you're doing any kind of spiritual work, divination definitely included. And that goes for whether you're doing it at home on your own for yourself or for a friend, or if you're doing it in a professional setting. Before I start a reading, I always like to really center myself and take a few deep breaths. I like to bring myself into the moment. I encourage my clients to do that with me. So basically, when you come in, before I even start, before I cast any runes or flip any cards, we're just gonna take a few deep breaths and relax, right? And I think that's a really important place to start. I usually use a little bit of sound. I am a huge fan of incorporating sound into spiritual practice. So I usually always have singing bowls, like crystal singing bowls, set up in the room when I'm doing readings. And so I'll do just a couple minutes of sound, and just to kind of help the client and myself to kind of come into that moment and get ready for whatever message wants to come through. So that's like before we even start, that's how we start. Then once we've gotten that out of the way and we're centered and grounded and relaxed, then I invite the client to ask specific questions if they want to. I always think it is best if you have a specific question, say it out loud, put the energy out into the space, let your guides hear it. Then the reader knows what advice and issue you're looking for advice on. The reader, myself or whoever it is, or I can kind of tailor it through, they can like filter it through that lens. So if you have a specific question, that's kind of the place that I invite you to ask that specific question or questions. And then I would also include in that, if there is a specific if there's like a specific person, entity, deity that you want guidance from, that's a great place to open up to that as well. Either say it out loud, or at the very least kind of hold that intention, send that energetic invitation out to that, whether it's your own higher self a deity you want to connect to, a specific animal spirit guide, whatever it is, right? And so when you do that, when you're asking specific questions, putting intention out to get a message from a specific guide, obviously we can't guarantee that's the message that's going to come through, but I have seen more times that I can count at this point where that really does help to guide what comes through. So asking specific questions if you have them. If not, it's always okay to just approach it from a place of, hey, I just want to know what comes through, and we'll see what spirit has to say. If you start thinking of questions along the way, then we can know it can be a dialogue. With me, when I'm doing readings, I don't mind if there's conversation in the reading that happens. In fact, I think that that helps
Yeah,
spaces.
definitely. I'm
So
sure that helps a lot of people feel just more comfortable in general, you
yeah.
know. What role do you believe the client plays in their own healing or insight?
That is a great question. So healing, I really always look at healing as something that isn't done by the healer. It's like the healing is done by the person being healed is I think a more accurate way of looking at it. And even that, I don't necessarily know that the language is conveying the right message there, but it's I think it's a lot closer to the healer sets the stage, creates the atmosphere, maybe even offers the energy to the client that they need to come in back into balance. But it's always up to the client to embrace that energy if it's a healing process, or even if it's a message that's coming through in a reading, like it's up to the client how they receive that message. So, excuse me. So I think that one, like the message that that person is ready to receive is what's going to come through. I mean, that's really how it works. However, I also think that they will, in their own time, like they'll make sense of the message when they need to. So it maybe won't always even make sense right in the moment when the reading is happening. That's okay. And whether it's me or another reader, you're getting the reading, like, and it doesn't all 100% click in the reading, even if you're doing it for yourself. That's all right. Give it a little bit of time. So I think that really it's at the end of the day, it's like what's going to come through is what they are ready to hear or receive or embrace. And so that's kind of the way that I think.
Okay, I like it. I like how in depth you are. So now we're gonna kind of go into some like wisdom and advice for our listeners. All of these are very interesting questions. What is something you wish more people understood about psychic or intuitive work
That it's more a tool for self knowledge than future prediction.
or money?
Right. Yeah.
Or money.
Yes, yeah. So it's yeah, I think you have to look at these practices more as a way to understand yourself than a way to peer into the future. That's not to say that doesn't happen. The divination practices predict events all the time, sometimes alarmingly accurately. But that's not the point of it. The point is to gain self knowledge and be able to see what direction you're heading so that if that's not where you want to end up, you have time to steer the ship somewhere else.
Pivot.
Yeah.
Pivot.
Yeah. So it's again, I think it's always a tool for self knowledge. Again, my foundation's always coming from working with runes and like Nordic philosophy is very much like you're in control of your own fate. Right. So again, I think it's just if more people could approach it that way, I think more people would get more benefit out of it. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
looking at it as a tool for self knowledge rather than trying to use it as the crystal ball that's going to see into the future.
Right. I also almost want to say like validation or outside validation,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's another part of it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what comes through in readings mostly is validation from
Yeah.
people. And, sometimes we do need that, right? We're all human. I get it. But yeah, I would say that's if I had to boil all of the readings I've ever done down to like a singular message, I would say the most common one that comes through is like believe in yourself. So
And that's almost kind of coming into my next question here too, is what message do you feel the collective really needs to hear right now?
yeah, that's it, guys. It's like look, it's and this is not to say when I say believe in yourself, that doesn't mean you have to do it all on your own now. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you can't learn from teachers and listen to gurus and seek counsel from others. That's all okay. It's just that I think we are all being slowly and gently encouraged by spirit to trust what's within, right? And it's human to want to seek the validation outside of us, that it's okay to want that. It's just, I think we are being more, we're being encouraged to, to stop looking outside of ourselves and start to look within and
Hmm.
trust our own inner powers and our own intuition and all that. So yeah, I would say that's hands down like the most common thing. Now, I think another thing that a lot of people ask when that comes up in a reading is, okay, well, what do I do? Right? Like what do I do to embrace the collective and the shift, and what do I do to help? Right. And so I think interestingly enough, it mostly right now for a lot of people that wondering that is inner work that needs to happen. It's because of the as above, so below principle. All the inner work you're doing is helping the collective shift. In fact, that's what's causing the collective shift is all of
Uh-huh.
the individual work that we're all doing. So yeah, I think that's right now, the more we can work on ourselves and the more we could embrace our own power and call our own souls in and do what we're really being called to do, right? As long as it's not hurting somebody else in the process, do what brings you the most joy and light and love and enthusiasm. Because I'm convinced that that's how your higher self talks to you. That is what they use as a communication tool to say, yes, good job. You're in alignment with what you're meant to be doing with your time and energy. So it's really, we overcomplicate it. That I think it's actually that simple.
Keep it simple and you do you, boo boo.
That's it. And definitely is the number one like reoccurring thing that's coming through right now.
Hmm.
So
So, do you have a favorite crystal tool or ritual right now that you like to do?
so crystal wise, I have a few lately. I would say I just got a piece of lepidolite that's like amazing, and I can't stop staring at it.
Mm.
It's very shiny, and I love it.
Yeah.
And that one's also, it's said to be good for it. It's a stone of intuition, but it's also good for like emotional clearing, reading, and then from what I've been feeling from the stone, that feels accurate. So I like that one a lot. And tektites are always my favorite, like moldavite. I know some people are intimidated by moldavite, but moldavite's probably one of my very favorite crystals. And any other tektites like Libyan desert glass.
All of those.
Saphrodite is one that's from here in Arizona. It's
Mm.
purple. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And those all really have really cool energies with
Yeah,
them.
yeah, very
So,
cosmic.
yeah.
Those are great stones to help you tap in to dormant energies and kind of propel you on your awakening journey. Moldavite, I think, while we're talking about it, it gets a bad rap sometimes. People think it's like overstimulating, or I've heard lots of things, and there always tend to be not necessarily the most kind way to describe something. So here's my theory on Moldavite. I'm gonna put this out there. I think it really represents unconditional love. And I
Hmm.
think that is one of the reasons why some people are uncomfortable with it. Is a lot of people unfortunately have not been exposed to that.
Or
So
have it for themselves, too.
or are not comfortable embracing that energy for themselves. And so that's something to think about. If you've had a hard time working with Moldavite, maybe you need to open up to allowing more compassion and more heart chakra energy into your life.
Hmm.
Because that really is, I think, the level that stone works on. But there's lots of other cool ones too. Always fascinated by certain shapes of crystals. Like I have a Vogel crystal. It's just a piece of clear quartz, which is like the most common crystal on the planet, but the way that it's cut, like you could feel the energy.
Hmm.
And so I'm a big fan of Bogles. Um, and I'm forgetting some other ones right now, but yeah, those are a few of my favorite crystals.
All right. I just have a couple more questions.
Cool.
If your spiritual work had a theme song, what would it be?
That is a good question. I mean, the one that just popped into my head right now when you asked that is the like Indiana Jones, like
My God.
so I don't know. I guess that popped in.
All right,
Yeah.
the Indiana Jones
So
theme
I guess
song.
it's that.
And before we finish up here, What intention would you like to leave our listeners with today?
I think the intention I would like to leave the listeners with is to feel encouraged to explore these kind of practices, right? I think tarot runes, especially, was looked at in a very negative light for a long time. And I think that's unfortunate because, again, I think these are all amazing tools for self knowledge and for self improvement. And so I would say if you are drawn to exploring these kind of practices, whether you want to come in to the center and get a reading, or whether you want to get your own set of runes or tarot cards or oracle cards and start exploring, I think just take the fear out of the equation, guys, right? Go after what you're excited about and stop running away from what you're afraid of. I guess that would be my intention to leave the audience with.
Okay, I like that. Well, thank you, Relic, so much for sharing your journey and your wisdom with us today. It is really a gift to have you as a part of the Crystal Magic Psychic Center family. And for those listening, you guys can book with Relic on our website, crystalmagicpsychiccenter.com. Read through his bio, see all the different modalities he works with, and, book and get your session with him. Until next time, guys, stay grounded. For the love of God, please, let's all stay grounded, okay? Stay open and trust your path.
Thanks for stopping
Bye,
by,
guys.
guys. Have fun.